Good. And where are you from? Are you from Sydney, newcomer? Sydney. Thank you for coming. Also Sydney? Mostly living in Sydney district. So welcome today. Thank you so much for coming and inviting us here today to share a little bit. Whatever. We hope that your stay or your visit here today will ignite a little interest in your hearts, or let's say further whatever interest is there in Krishna consciousness, or our relationships with Krishna. The teachings of the Hare Krishna movement, make it simple, are basically just to help us to awaken to our normal or our spiritual natures. Haribol, what happened? So I don't know what we're going to read today. I see no books in sight anywhere, and I have none. So what shall we read? Pardon? Well, Bhagavad Gita we could definitely read from, but should we read from Bhagavad Gita? I don't know. If there is one available. Well, that's very small. I might not be able to read that. Eyesight. If we can get a slightly larger print. Hare Krishna. We had lots of kirtan. We'll have a little bit more later on, but I think we should hear something for a while. Oh.
If I could just request everybody if you could just move forward, so people will come after.
Thank you. It probably will be a few more devotees and guests coming. Whoa. Have you got a book without all this writing in it? He's written on every other line. I can't read what's what and what. He's writing everywhere, all over the page. Somebody's been really using this. They put their own comments all over the writing. I can't read it. I've opened it up on chapter 6. Woo. Chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. I think everyone's familiar with Bhagavad Gita, is that right? Even our newcomers today may have heard of Bhagavad Gita. And even in the Western world now, most people have heard of Bhagavad Gita. They may or may not have read it, or they probably read a version of the Gita, which may be very interesting philosophically or otherwise, but not necessarily helping people to really understand the inner message of the Gita or be able to apply it in our lives. That's a little bit better. Thanks, Paul. Thank you. So we do have plenty of copies in all different languages, actually. This is the English version. We have it in I don't know what other languages, and a lot of languages of India, and I've seen out there. I don't know if other languages are available, but certainly Hindi and Bengali and Tamil and many languages are there. But this is English version. I guess everybody understands English. Does everyone understand? Anyone does not understand English? And if you don't, you won't be able to understand what I'm saying anyway, so hopefully you can find somebody who can translate, but I presume everyone understands English. So I don't know if we should read from the 6th chapter. We can, as we've opened it here. On this chapter, chapter 6 is this. Sometimes it's known as Jnana Yoga, sometimes Ashtanga Yoga. But it actually describes, you could say, the practice of Hatha Yoga also. When people talk about yoga, which is quite common in the world today, we have even yoga teachers with us today. If you want to know more about the practice of what we normally understand as yoga, a different pranayam or different postures and different ways of balancing the life airs in our body by different maneuvers, etc. In the form of Hatha Yoga, Chaitanya Ballabha Prabhu, I'm sure you can educate us on these various practices, yoga teacher. And some of you, anyone else here, yoga teacher? I mean, when we talk of yoga teacher, meaning you call it Hatha Yoga? What would you call it? Hatha Yoga? Pardon? You're a teacher? Bhakti Yoga, okay. We're glad to hear it. Fantastic. Anyway, there are many clubs, yoga societies around the world, and in most cases they teach this, we could say, foundational understanding of yoga, Hatha Yoga, but the real practice of this Hatha Yoga is not as easy as it sounds. And we'll hear a little bit about it. As we've just sort of randomly opened the Gita on chapter 6, I'm going to say one or two little prayers first before we start maybe. Om Jnanantimirandasya Jnanandinana Shalakya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Shvayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Shwapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Anvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Purnamami Hari Priye Vanchakopoturubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvebhyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Gauranga Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Sarasvate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Pastyachade Shatarine. Hare Krishna. So, the crowd has increased. We started off with a little group, and now we've expanded. So welcome to those who've just arrived. So this chapter 6 starts off with a little description by Krishna about what is renunciation. Renunciation normally would mean giving up, Giving up. But Krishna's definition of renunciation takes on a slightly different meaning. Instead of one who just gives up work or gives up society, and gives up ambition and so on, he presents it slightly different, in the sense of not being detached from one's duty, but rather being detached from the fruits of the work. And he encourages working. He encourages following one's dharma, swadharma in this world, one's occupational activity, inclination, but without being attached to the fruits. Now, that's not easy, is it? Most of us are quite attached to the results of our activity, I think. Am I right to say? We want some return. It may not be monetary, but we want something, recognition or satisfaction or something. Pardon? Fame, recognition, fame, name. That type of return is pretty much, it'd be rare to meet someone who's really detached from that. Not to say there aren't, but it's rare. So that's what Krishna's more emphasizing when he talks about renunciation. It's another kind of renunciation, isn't it? Doing your service without being attached to the results. Because usually the results are one of the driving forces for our study, for our movements in this world, even relationships. Could we close the door, do you think? We can't obviously expect people to close their mouths, but at least we can close the door. Well, I don't think that would be. Yeah. Well, let's see what we can do. But try to hear carefully. Yeah, try to be a little attentive so that everyone else can hear. Get a little bit quiet there. Good. So it's rare to find that someone is, doing their duty without any expectation. But Krishna says this is the real renunciation, real sannyasi, Everyone can be a sannyasi in that way. That's you could say, the definition of one who's in the mood of sannyas, which is this mood of giving up or becoming detached from the fruits of the work. Then Krishna goes on to explain, let's see, the process, you could say, of coming to that. Now, traditionally, in ancient societies, there were different systems in place to help us to not just become renounced. Most people don't even want that, probably. The purpose, please be quiet. The purpose of becoming renounced is not just to become renounced. To become detached from the fruits of the work is, so what? No, the purpose of this is a higher purpose. Earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna that we may detach ourselves from the sense objects, gross or subtle. But without purification of our hearts, the taste for some form of material sense gratification will still be there, subtle or gross, without the actual purification of the heart. Even with purification of the heart, we're living in an impure atmosphere. And there's every chance. Please be quiet. Please be quiet. It's nice, but don't keep butting in, please. It's fine. Please stay, but please be quiet. It's hard to concentrate for the audience, particularly if someone keeps speaking in between. Thank you. So it's not enough just to be detached, even if you accept, this process of yoga, etc. Yoga is not just about becoming healthy in this lifetime, living a healthy lifestyle, which many people equate it with. It's not just about becoming a little peaceful, which is related. And it's not even about becoming detached. It's about being attached to the right thing. So Krishna explains earlier in the Gita, param drishtva nivartate. Because even in ordinary dealings, if we want to, let's say we have a habit which we're not very keen on, or we may be keen, but we know it's not good for us. Smoking, for instance, is common, drinking, some other thing, whatever it is, something which is not really something we really want to do, but we're attached or addicted even. To become free of that, generally speaking, I mean, you can get free just like that, but generally we have to have something to occupy. That means to say, when we're frustrated like that, or when we have to resort to some kind of behavior because of whatever reason, there's a reason behind it. There's something there's something missing in our lives. Something missing. There's some, vacuum of some kind. It has to be, we have to find something which is more satisfactory to fill that vacuum, or that nature, that particular aspect of our lives. So what to speak of spiritually, if we even think about it, most people don't, and maybe you don't either. But if we even think about the teaching here, that what is the purpose of human life is not just to become more and more implicated in material development, economic development, sense enjoyment, even religiosity. These are all within the realm of material life, trying to find satisfaction in the material world, even through religion, even, through yoga. People are trying to satisfy their material lives. But there's a much deeper thing. And it's just changing or improving the already existing situation is not the purpose of yoga. The purpose of yoga is to actually understand, to link on the spiritual platform, not just improve the material platform, but to understand our spiritual nature, to act in such a way to actually realize our spiritual nature, and what is the constitutional nature of the spiritual or purified soul. So Bhagavad Gita gives us many stages, even in the name of yoga. We find Krishna, practically he starts off, the first instructions that Krishna gives are not necessarily yoga. He talks about jnana. Jnana means knowledge. Knowledge of the difference between matter and spirit. He introduces various kinds of yoga in the beginning, but he becomes specific when the action, either jnana, karma rather, or knowledge, jnana, becomes connected. Yoga means literally to connect. When it's connected to our spiritual nature and ultimately to the nature of the soul, our constitutional nature, our relationship with the Supreme Personality. This is the essence of yoga, to connect us. It may start on a very ground level with various sense control, with various activities which help to regulate our lives, maybe awaken a little bit of something we never heard of before, you're not your body, or some little bit of a spiritual knowledge may come in the beginning also. But the practice of, let's say, realization, of understanding, Krishna starts with what's called karma yoga. Karma yoga is very simple. Most of you know what karma means, although karma has several meanings, by the way. It doesn't just mean reaction. It also refers to work or endeavor and so on like that, or activity which results in the development of future material bodies. So when we say karma yoga, it means activities which will help us to connect with our origins, or realize our original nature, or spiritual natures. Then he describes other forms of yoga. Dhyana yoga in this chapter is mentioned. Dhyana, although more hatha yoga is mentioned here, but other yogas are also mentioned. Jnana yoga, bhakti yoga is there, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, and whatever. All different names of different types of yoga are there nowadays. But primarily it's karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, ashtanga yoga, and bhakti yoga are defined in the Bhagavad Gita. So in this chapter we're going to look a little bit at dhyana yoga or ashtanga yoga. So Krishna says that one who's a neophyte, a beginner, then this practice of hatha yoga can be, sometimes it's emphasized. But it's emphasized nowadays a little bit differently to that which is spoken by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. A little differently. And if you read these verses, you can start, let's say, I don't know what verse, but before Krishna gets into a definition of the details of this form of yoga, he talks a little bit about the mind. Another aspect of yoga is to control the mind. Now, you may have found in your life that it's not always easy to control the mind. Ever had a problem with that one? Always, someone said. Not sometimes, always. It's not easy, is it? In fact, we see here, later in this chapter, not here, time is short, so later in this chapter, Arjuna, after hearing from Krishna a description of this form of yoga, which is meant to elevate our consciousness, not just to make us healthy, and not just to even detach us from this world, but to bring us to a awareness of ourself, which is possible through this form of yoga, although very difficult. Arjuna said, "This is not possible for me, Krishna. I can't do this, because this form of yoga, practically speaking, depends on our ability to control our minds. Not easy. It's not just about, practicing some exercises. Is that right, Chaitanya?" It's correct, okay. He has to say yes to whatever I say. He hasn't got any choice. Even if I don't agree with that, but I got to say yes. No, you can disagree if you wish. No problem. But generally, yoga is meant for sense control, mind control. They say mind control is misunderstood. It doesn't mean sometimes they think you're becoming brainwashed, like a zombie or something. It doesn't mean that. It means you are in control of your mind. Have you ever thought of that? We don't say me mind, unless you're from Scotland. It's me mind, me mind. But most people say my mind, right? Isn't it? I'm having so much trouble with my mind. Why do you say that? If you are the mind, why do you say that? It doesn't make any sense. It's a mad statement. I am having trouble with my mind. And people are automatically admitting they're not the mind just by that statement alone. Of course, with the body, it's as clear as a bell, but with the mind, it's not. But still, they say that. It's amazing how dull, I suppose, how stupid in a sense, that we say, I'm having trouble with my mind, but we still think, we don't see who I am. Nobody seems to go beyond that. Who is that I who's having trouble with the mind? The mind is like the platform where we, thinking, feeling, willing. Our life is basically lived on the platform of the mind. Whatever happens in the body or friendships or whatever around us is reflected on our minds. And it's on that platform that we really experience the emotions and everything are swirling around there and disturbing us or elating us or whatever it is. But we're beyond that. We're watching it. It's something like a very incredible television, multi-dimension. Television is what? Two-dimensional? They call two-dimensional television? The world is three-dimensional, is that right? Something like that. But the mind is like multi-dimensional. It does never know what's going to happen next. It's like incredible. Thoughts come in the mind. They just come in the mind. They never stop. How many thoughts a minute? What do they say? I think the scientists have tried to analyze this. It's an incredible number of thoughts. Whatever thoughts mean, or at least the vibration, whatever it is, into the mind every moment practically. We're bombarded. It's like all the rivers flowing into the ocean in the world all at the same time. They never end. They flow in like that. Incredible flow. I'll read one verse from the second chapter as a prelude to this. Second chapter is the contents. There's a general overview, but there's a verse towards the end where Krishna says, Apuryamanam atalapatishtam samudamapak pravishanti advat tadvat kamayang pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakamakami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. And it is referring to the mind and all the thoughts and desires that pour into our mind. They're already there. They're literally just coming to the surface. Some new ones are created by association. But basically, most of the thoughts and desires are already there. They just come to the surface one after the next, triggered off by various environmental circumstances. But they're already there. We don't realize. Our subconscious is just an ocean of various desires and thoughts and so on. And they come to the surface, and we go this way and we go that way, and we're trying to satisfy them. Sometimes we have to resort to some kind of help in the form of some medicines or something to calm us down. We're so disturbed, etc., etc. Or just we have to try to satisfy them by various means, and still we're not peaceful. So yoga is to help to regulate and to pacify by balancing a little bit our subtle bodies, a little bit peaceful. But it's very hard to practice in Kali Yuga. We're not living in a very sattvic or good mode. I mean, Sydney, and like any other city in the world, is very passionate. Even the ether. Nowadays, the ether, where vibrations are moving and, sound vibrations traveling through the ether. Now we have electromagnetic waves. The whole ether is just surcharged with all kinds of whatever. Television, radio, mobile phones. What else you got going on there? I don't know. But all sorts of things which are actually causing disturbance to the subtle bodies of the living entities. They don't even know it. We can't see it. We're used to it. We're getting step by step adjusted. You sort of imperceptibly it kind of creeps up, and it affects our whole reaction to things and everything. Makes it very. And 5,000 or more years ago, when Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, even then Arjuna said, "This is very difficult to practice this yoga. The mind is more restless than the raging wind." We know what the raging wind's like. You get very heavy winds here sometimes? Very windy sometimes. So in some places, you're here, Chaitanya Baba was from the Philippines, not far from where he's from Legazpi. But Tacloban, there's one just south of Legazpi, there's one island there, Tacloban. They had winds there 350 kilometers an hour a few years ago. I don't know if you can imagine what that's like. 350 kilometers an hour. I spoke to someone from there. They said it was like for hours, it was just like being inside of a Boeing, was it 747 jet engine or something? It's what it felt like. The sound was just unbearable, what to speak of the wind. Incredible. So Arjuna is saying, it's more restless than that. Raging wind. How to control such a entity or a whatever, a sense, the mind, king of the senses, Manuksastani Indriyani, of the six senses. The living entity is struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So yoga is meant to help to control the senses, particularly to control the mind. But Arjuna finds it very difficult. And if you read what's here, you'll see why he finds it very difficult. It's not just about practicing a few exercises once or twice a week or a day even. It's much more than that. So Krishna starts off, yes, you can deliver yourself, Arjuna, with the help of your mind. The mind can be your friend or your enemy. We may not understand what that means in one sense. We only understand it from the material perspective. The mind being one's friend is when our mind helps to deliver us from our entanglement in this world. So let's read on a little bit what Krishna says about the practice here of one who wants to perfect their lives in this way. To practice yoga, this kind of yoga, one should go to a secluded place. Maybe you can find such a place in Australia, in the desert or in the outback somewhere, the bush, I don't know how secluded they are, and should lay kusha grass on the ground. It's a special type of grass. So said to be very good. It's said to be, keeps away various entities. And then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. This deer skin also is said to keep away certain, tigers or something, I don't know, something or another. The seat should be neither too high nor too low, and should be situated in a sacred place. Maybe there's some aboriginal sacred places, whether that suits the cause, I don't know. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses and activities and fixing the mind on one point. And that doesn't mean a candle or a flower, which some yoga groups do. They try to. You meditate on a candle, you might become a candle in your next lifetime or something, but not very very good aspiration. Or become a flower, maybe a little bit better. Okay, maybe you can say it's helping to fix our mind on one point, but real meditation doesn't mean that. It means to fix our consciousness on the spiritual objective, the goal of yoga. One should hold one's body, neck and head erect. Straight. We can all practice this. Let's give it a crack. Come on. Everyone give this a crack now. We're going to do a yoga session here. Demonstration. Maybe you're going to have to do it. I haven't done this for a few years. And we might give it a crack, but we might have a few cracks here and there as well at the same time. Let's see how we do. Come on. Come on. Be brave. Come on, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls. Come on. Who's a man around here? Come on. Come on. Get it together. Don't just sit there like a dumpling. dumpling. So one should hold one's body. That doesn't mean you hold it with your arms. It means you have to hold it in of itself. I need some water before we start. I can tell that much. That might be my last water I get, by the way. If it is. I hope you've got an ambulance nearby, or some doctors at hand here. Okay, let's go. Come on. Everyone can do this. Most of you are younger than me, I think, in body. Yeah, you're doing a good job. Oh, you're not dressed for the occasion. You're going to have a problem there. You are not dressed for the occasion. Well, if you're not dressed for the occasion, we'll let you off on this one. But I think most of the men are dressed for the occasion. Some of the ladies are. Be careful. No indecent exposure, please. One should hold one's body, neck, and head. Oh, my goodness. You're going to have to come behind me and straighten me up here. In a straight line. And stare steadily at the tip of the nose. That's not too difficult. Can you do it? Straight back. Now this is going from Mahananda. Is he here? Straight back, Mahananda. Tip at your nose. Stare at the tip of your nose. Make sure you blow in your nose before you do it. Good idea. Now we're ready. All set now to go. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me, Krishna says, within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Thus, practicing constant control of the mind, body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God by cessation of material existence. So that's just an introduction to the practice, really. It describes further that not only that, you have to sit straight like this. And you're supposed to sit in some kind of yogic posture, so let's see what posture we can sit in. Can you put your legs around your neck? Is that what they do? You can do that, right? No? Oh, how disappointing. Huh? Too much prasadam. We'll let you off today, but normally. Okay, left, right, I don't know, right, left, up, I didn't put this one over like that. There you go. That's fun, isn't it? Easy. Now that's not too difficult, is it? Is it? Okay, here's our judge here. He's going to go around and look at everybody and see how you're all doing. Now take the other leg. Now, I used to be able to do this. I never did that kind of yoga, but I used to be able to do it. But after 15 years of not doing it, it might be a little bit difficult. I'm halfway there. Probably more than some of you can do with your young frames. Stiff as bricks, aren't you guys, huh? Look at you, stiff as a brick. Jeez, how are you going to practice yoga? If you don't do this, you'll never go back to Godhead. This is a preliminary stage. Okay, sit there. Now, straight as a... Oh, back, straight. Okay, get in there. You got to control the breathing. How do you do that? They stop breathing altogether, don't they? I don't understand that one, but... No eating, no sleeping, no drinking water, no talking, no mobile phones. What else? None of. No TVs, no nothing. And sit there in the yogic posture, peaceful, half-closed eyes, staring at the tip of the nose, focusing your inner consciousness in your heart on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's nice, isn't it? You forget about the aching knees and the aching ankles and the back. Just remember Krishna in your heart. Of course, yogis may be chanting Om, Om. The original sound vibration personified by the Hare Krishna mantra. You have to sit there for more than a few seconds. Thousands of years sometimes yogis would stay in this posture. Fixed. Controlling their breathing. Incoming breath into the outgoing breath. Suspended. Consciousness steady. It's nice. In one sense, but how long can you do it? If you can do it at all. Maybe for a few moments. And after a while, some parts start to ache. Have you ever noticed that? And your mind gets disturbed, the mobile goes off, and so many things on our mind. It drives us, and it's very hard. So Arjuna, practically speaking, declines. Krishna, however, says that there is no possibility of one becoming a yogi, O Arjuna. You've got to learn from this. If one eats too much or too little. If one's a yogi, that's something else. To become a yogi. Sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. We sometimes artificially try to practice this lifestyle. But that's not really what the goal of it all is. The point is whatever helps us to reach the goal. Now in previous ages, this practice in a very, very, let's say, pure atmosphere, there's none of modern day technology and all the various things that are going on in our society were not there. It was a lot more, the ether was very clear and society was very simple, based on more or less simple living. Much easier to practice this lifestyle, or this practice of yoga, let's say. He who is regulated, Krishna says, he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work, can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. It seems a little contradictory, but this is preparation. We have to be regulated. Society was much more regulated probably than now, but regulated in our behavior. It helps to stabilize the mind, helps us to control the senses more. So in this way, the yogi can gradually become devoid of material desire. Not of desire, but material desire. We were just now talking about meditating on the Lord. That is a desire. It's not a question of eradicating desires. It's a question of the quality of desire. The nature of desire. So when we have spiritual desires, that is purifying. That purifies our consciousness. It's a higher taste. When our consciousness is focused on spiritual subject matters, focused on the deity, focused on the spiritual holy names, the mantras. This purifies our consciousness and in fact purifies the atmosphere also. It has an extended result. And then you can become very peaceful. As a lamp, Krishna says, in a windless place does not waver. So the transcendentalist whose mind is controlled remains always steady in his meditation, undisturbed by what's going on. But it's very hard to come to that point in our present situation. It's more or less trying to practice some form of exercise, yoga, or some sense control, whatever, just to be able to not be quite so disturbed and be more peaceful, a little happier in the environment, but not to transcend it altogether. So that stage, Krishna says, of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activity by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Oh, it sounds really nice. Boundless. What is that? Means no boundaries, unending, ever increasing, transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses, not through contaminated or materialistic senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. One never wants to go back again to trying to find pleasures in the temporary nature of this world. And upon gaining this, he thinks there's no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. Wouldn't that be something? I mean, we all face difficulties, don't we? Maybe of different kinds. Maybe they're due to other people, maybe they're due to our own frustrations or whatever, limitations or sufferings of our body or family members or something, economics, whatever, fears of various kinds. Everyone's in a position where we're subjected to these unwanted experiences. But one who's on this platform there, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty, they're not in any way disturbed. This indeed is actual freedom from all misery arising from material contact. So this is the one process here. But you have to, Krishna says, you have to engage with great determination and faith and not be deviated. And be willing to abandon all material desire born of speculation and so on, and control the senses and mind. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of this process of intelligence, sustained with full conviction. Quite a demand, huh? And then Krishna goes on, wherever the mind wanders, because it may wander. This direction can be for all of us, no matter what we're doing. Wherever the mind wanders, due to its flickering nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. He goes on to explain the perfection of the yogis who practice this method. And the perfection of that yoga is for one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me. I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. In other words, one feels the presence of Supreme Lord everywhere, in every situation, no matter what is going on, one feels the Lord's presence. This is the stage of trance, samadhi, which can be attained through this very extreme form of yoga. He's a perfect yogi who sees his own self, by comparison to his own self, he sees the true equality of all beings. And that equality is not like what we perhaps look for in our modern lives, equality amongst genders, races, this thing, that thing. That will never succeed because by nature we're all different. Every living entity has different nature and needs different things to satisfy them. You can't take it away, the individuality. The equality is based, in this case, on spiritual vision, not material imposition or material comparisons, but it's based upon spiritual realization of actually realizing the true equality between all living entities. In the following chapters, Krishna explains, Avidya vinaya sampane brahmani gavi hashtini shuni chaiva shapaki cha pandita samadarshina. The learned sage, one who's actually on a spiritual platform, sees with equal vision learned Brahmins, elephants, dogs, meat eaters, everybody. They're not externally equal, they're all different. Everyone's different, but spiritually, because they're all spirit souls, the same spiritual quality. This is the realization of a self-realized person. So the process of yoga is to come to that realization is one stage of realization, of realizing the nature of Brahman or the nature of spirit. Yeah. Arjuna then said, O Madhusudana, calling Krishna, Madhusudana, one who removes all doubts. I've got a doubt here, I've got a problem here. I don't think I can continue. Don't think I can do this. I don't think I can follow that form of yoga. It's very hard. Because my mind is very, very restless. Very hard. And Krishna then Time flies in Sydney. Why does it go so fast in Sydney? I think because we're so absorbed in our material pursuits, maybe. So Krishna says, yes, it's hard to control, but it is possible by suitable practice and detachment. But even that is hard to become detached. But suitable practice, maybe. So what is that suitable practice? And what is the relevant detachment that he's referring to, which is relevant to us? So that suitable practice in this age is not really this process. Even Jnana Yoga, we don't have the stability of mind and the intellectual capacity to analyze data, or to speak of spiritual truths. With our present brains, they're limited, so limited. Where lifespan is short, there's so many disturbances in the world today. We're conditioned the way we are. Our bodies are not in good shape. You name it. It's very hard to practice these. Karma yoga, where is the possibility? Everyone's engaged in some way or another in some sinful business, practically speaking. It's very hard. You can give the fruits of your work. But the practical process, or let's say in this age that we're in, is another thing altogether. It's that which is suitable to attain the goal. And that practice in this age is Bhakti Yoga. Every age is the most suitable, but particularly in this age, it's the only one which is really effective anyway. Bhakti Yoga includes Karma Yoga at various stages. Bhakti Yoga is the yoga of devotion to Krishna. Whatever we do, whatever is going on in life, we try to see how that can be done for the pleasure of Krishna. And in this way, Krishna himself, not just by our own endeavor to control our breathing, control our senses, but Krishna himself takes control in the 12th chapter, which is called Bhakti Yoga. Krishna says, I am the deliverer, swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death for those who engage in my devotional service. And how do we know what is devotion? We're fortunate to hear how we can do that. The Lord's very kind in that sense. We have the opportunity to associate with those who are connected to Krishna through devotion. And we learn how we can step by step engage our senses in a higher taste. It's not a question of restraining them. It's a question of engaging them in the service of Krishna. And in this way we become satisfied. You attain the same goal and more. And in the end of the chapter, Krishna says we have to jump over. Yogi nama api sarvesham magadena antaratma shwadavan. Shwadavan bhajate yomam samayuktatamo mataha. Of all yogis, Krishna says, the one who with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. That's by Yogeshwar, the Supreme Master of Yoga, has declared that one who's engaged in this devotional service is the highest of all yogis.